La Lanterna, a spotlight in Italian football, is a podcast that dives into the beautiful game seen from the eyes of two fans from the oldest team in Italy's point of view. My name is Fabrizio Cardone, Canadian and Genovese, together with my friend Matt Killen, an American-born and Genoa fan. Every week, we'll tell you all you need to know about the only team you need to know about, Genoa CFC. Plus, we'll have guests and provide updates from around the magical world of Italian football.
I think it was a very important point, like you say. I think we played very good. We were compact. We played as a really good team. We played against Juventus, one of the best clubs in the world. So, we are very happy with the point. I think we could have taken 3 points, but we respect the 1 point. The fans are everything to us. We have, for sure, one of the best fans in Italy. And we always feel like we are playing with man more when we play at home. And I think that's also the biggest reason why we're so good at home. I think we can challenge every club in this country when we play here at home. I want to keep both feet on the ground. I want to enjoy the moment, live in the now. Right now I feel very good here in Genoa. I want to keep on performing well every weekend and, get our goals to stay in the league. After that, I have to say, first and foremost important is to, enjoy and play good with Genoa.
And after listening to the voice of Goodmanson in an interview post Genoa Juve, welcome to our pre-Christmas episode. So, benvenuti, bentornati, and this is La Lanterna podcast with yours true only, Fabrizio, but most importantly...
No, I'm not most importantly. Fabry, ciao, it's Matt. How are you doing?
I am good. So we skipped 1 week. I apologize to our listeners, but between the holidays and family matters and so on, it happened. It's okay, I suppose. Also because we were a little bit quite on I'm going to say it like a negative / damper / what would you call that?
No, I mean, it was a tough week, right? We had a lot of matches and a lot of kind of things to respond to in a short amount of time. So, sometimes it happens. You can't always record before every single one.
Yeah, no, but mostly I was thinking about the Monza match. So this was match day 15 on a road trip. So we were playing at Monza. Monza to be consolidated in Serie A, but at the same time, it seemed and seems on the paper to be a possible team where we can face them evenly, at least, right?
Absolutely.
So we went there with great propositions and great mentality, at least from a fan's perspective. We had Matteo Retegui and Junior Messias together for, I guess, since ever, at least.
And Goodmanson.
And Goodmanson.
The trio, all starting together.
Exactly. And we were missing, if I'm not mistaken, Malinowski for a ban. But at the same time, we were wondering what would that look like. So it started more like a 5. What would you call that? What would have that been? Like a 3-5-2 or a 4-3-3, or what did it look like?
It's kind of hard to say. I guess you could call it a 3-5-2, but I mean, I know what you're getting at. Like Messias is not playing as a holding midfielder in that situation, So it's kind of been that strange amorphous 3 at the back, 5, call it midfield-ish type players with some of our more traditional fullbacks playing more in a wing-back role, and 2 forwards, but kind of not playing in a proper, number 9 role either themselves, Goodmanson and Retegui. So yeah, I suppose I would call it a 3-5-2.
In Italian, we call it il quinto, so the 5th. So he was not the 5th, meaning on the side, so right back or left back, on the winger side type of the midfield. He was more, at least on the lineup that I'm looking at, he was more in the midfield siding with Badel and Frendrup. I'm not talking about Macias, of course, but
no, yeah, I know. Yeah, it was. I mean, look, to your point about this match, Fabry. I think the Right. It was one of the first, if I'm not mistaken, it was the first one that we had a full strength Retegui with Goodmanson, with Macias, all starting. We're going up against Monza, who had I think a very respectable Serie A campaign last season. Not a side that you take lightly, but to your point, I don't think it's a ridiculous or overly boastful statement to say we're playing Monza, we think we can get some points. I think that when you look at the matches on the fixture list, this is one where you hope to try to get something out of it. And obviously the match ends 1-0 to Monza's benefit.
Yeah.
And I think there's only a little bit of disappointment in what could have been some missed opportunities, a somewhat familiar kind of really quick coast-to-coast goal late in the match from the opposing team, some maybe poor communication in that transition defensively. Kind of seen it a couple of times, and unfortunately, it was one of the few instances where we actually had a couple of good chances, and we really didn't miss, or we really did not take those opportunities. So it was, all in all, I think a little bit of a letdown of a match. How would you say it?
Yeah, I don't want to really spend too much time on it because we're talking obviously a match that is recording now, ready post the Juventus match, getting ready for the Sassuolo match. But essentially, it was a letdown. We saw a lot of our people in the starting 11, our typical starting 11, being there. A few came back from injury, i.e. Retegui and Macias. So we were high expectations. The expectations did not meet. Perhaps managerial mistakes, perhaps interpretation or not cohesiveness, as you mentioned, also with respect to the benchers or even the players themselves. Mm-hmm. But a late goal in the dying minutes after the 90th minute from the Monza side, and essentially we came back home with 0 points.
That's what happened.
Exactly.
That was what it was.
In a nutshell, two only major chances that we had, one before the goal by Monza, which was essentially Retegui, which got like a very fast ball from, it was not a cross by Macias, it was more almost like a ricochet. A lot of people claim the fact that being a striker, you're supposed to even be able to catch those, but you can't really necessarily blame 100% Retegui. And the other one, which, Dragusin, he's definitely not a striker, but he had a great opportunity at goal, and it kind of got I would say half a foot, 6 inches, just right on the left side of the post, and that did not go in. So a little bit of bad luck, a little bit of people still complaining about certain choices from Gilardino, but at the same time, we can still point fingers on the bench. We can still point fingers at the coach when things goes bad, but ultimately it's up to everyone to pull their strings together and make it happen.
Well, what is your perspective on that? Because I think, look, after that match, we had not been in the best run of form, and indeed, even after this match against Juve, which we're going to talk about in just any second now, we've still not exactly been on some earth-shattering run of form. For us, it's been good enough, I think you can say. We've won one, we've drawn twice in our last 5, 2 losses in between. There maybe were reasons for people to say, what about Gilardino? Is this guy really our savior? But we have this match against Juve on the next item, and what a result that was. I mean, let's talk about that for a second and shift our focus, because what an incredible kind of performance, and I think it also puts perspective on some of these other conversations at the same time, at least to a little bit of a degree.
I don't know. I'm speechless because, as you said before, those matches that were ending with the Monza match, we came home, we gathered, and it's not only a matter of coming home, because before that one we had the tie with Empoli, which was quite disappointing as well.
That was super disappointing.
So I don't know. It's almost like with the big teams, let's call them that way, we're doing amazingly, and with these ones that were supposed to make the points, we're not making the points.
It's an uncanny habit. I don't think you see many teams do this over the course of a season, but Genoa have really played above their weight. And to your point, we know about the matches, we know about the Roma match, we know about getting points off of Lazio, we know about how well we played Napoli. I think you can list all of these examples and there are reasons to be proud, but I don't necessarily think it's a disappointment or that we're dropping our levels against these other sides. I mean, I think when you look at the match itself, we were a little bit compromised, unfortunately. No Retegui for this match. It didn't really feel very good for us Genoano, or I guess Genoani to include our female Genoa fans, about how this match was going to turn out. It's at the Ferraris. There's a little bit of pomp and circumstance, as there seemingly always is for home matches these days, where the 130th anniversary kit was to be worn. And I can't recall if all the stuff at the club shop was right before the match or right after it. I think that a number of the things with the players and the signings and all the gear being made available again online for release. The shirt that actually fits people like me was put on sale. So there's quite a bit of excitement about it. And, once again, we look like we're up for it in these matches. Like we're not looking at it like we're backing down or we're shy. And for me, I don't think like the draw flatters us at all. I think it was a deserved result. The way that I kind of look at this generally is you have a side that still believes in how they can get things done. And I do think, we'll talk a little bit about some adjustments that were made, but, you're seeing this similar constellation and you're seeing some of these players that were maybe scratching heads play all right in some of those roles. And more than anything else, you're seeing a team that's not afraid to go toe to toe with one of the better teams in Europe and certainly one of the better teams in Italy. So I think it's something you can only take positives from.
Wait, Europe?
Well, yes, but you know what I mean. At large, in the whole, Juve is one of the better teams, and you put them side by side against the other teams.
Well, definitely they have an uphand compared to all the other teams, not having any match from a European level. So with their depth in the bench and so on, they definitely have a lot more, I guess, opportunities and strength based on the run of matches compared to the other ones. But before we get to that, I guess to your point, I wanted to mention the fact of two different what do you call them? I can't even think about it. Two different. Oh God, what's the word? I'm talking about the new the gold and black kits, not kits, but jersey.
You're talking about like the streetwear stuff.
Yes, and also the essential one, which are on the stores, are in the stores because they opened some pop-up stores for the Christmas. But obviously, as you mentioned, online there's nothing to be found, but they look amazing in my opinion, quite good and nice. But for us, away from Genova, it's a little bit hard to get hands on.
That's all right. We were just talking about this before. We probably don't need to be spending $30 shipping anytime soon. So when they drop the whole order online, I'm sure we'll be the first ones to order some of that stuff.
Are you saying it's good, right?
Yeah. I mean, look, if that stuff released and it was available, we'd both be hitting the buy button and we'd be looking at it like, why did I just spend a quarter of my purchase on shipment?
So you're saying it's good, so at least we're not impulsive buying.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, thank you, Genoa.
I mean, I would be impulsive buying. I don't know about you. That would be.
Oh yeah, on that stuff, on that new stuff, big time. Anyways, I guess let's go to our quick break. This was a quick first half, but we're going to get our guest soon, and we'll talk about better in detail about the Juve match. My name is Fabrizio Cardone, and I approve this message. Welcome back to our second half. It was a very short first half, but at the same time, wanted to keep a little bit of the conversation going about the Juve match with our special guest right here with us. So welcome to our pod, Julian.
Hi, thank you guys for having me. Looking forward to it.
All right. So I guess the first thing we always love talking about with our guests, to talk a little bit about yourself, what you do, what, if you entertain different pods or especially journalism in your case, or, different websites or different social media pages and so on. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so Julian Faustini, 22 years old, born and raised Montreal, Canada. I'm a Serie A football writer and analyst for several sources. I've been on a few Serie A podcasts, such as Serie A Sit Down, the Calcio guys, and several others as well. So I'm an Interista, but overall a Serie A fan at heart, and looking forward to talking about the Genoa and all around the match week 16 with you guys.
So if you're a journalista, are you spanning overall on the Serie A, or you're more focusing on Inter because you're Interista?
I'm spanning more. I pretty much cover all the Serie A, and actually, I actually part of the Laziali team. So I'm a feature writer for Lazio. So I don't really write about Inter too much, to be honest with you.
Well, you're in good company, and we're super happy to have you, Julian. I mean, the Calcio guys definitely are good friends. I know Fabry has known those guys for some time, and we actually had a fellow Laziali comrade who I think is an actual Laziali on the pod a bit ago to talk to preview the Lazio match. We should have really had him on post that match because obviously it was a lot better for us than it was for him. We got a quick reaction from him afterwards. But welcome. I'm so excited to have someone who has a lot of Serie A knowledge. It's always fun to talk Calcio with folks. It's not always the easiest thing to do in North America, as you might know.
For sure.
And we're excited about it.
Yeah, no, it's great, especially these this past weekend has been incredible. A lot of exciting pictures and great results. So plenty of talking points.
So I guess that's a great opportunity to kind of wrap with respects to starting the conversation going with the match day 16. So before we go and dig into the Genoa Juve match, I want to quickly cover or talk about what happened in Serie A so far. So if we just look only at the match day 16, just to quickly talk about the results. So obviously we had the Genoa Juve match, which we'll talk again shortly, which ended 1-1, started on Friday. But all the other matches, we're recording today on Monday, but it kind of finished today, the match day 16. So we had Lecce Frosinone, which was quite exciting in a way, but it ended 2-1 for Lecce. Napoli Cagliari, which we had kind of eyes on because, at the bottom league, which we don't really like to look at the bottom league, but unfortunately right now, for the points we are having right now, we have to. Napoli did win 2-1 against Cagliari. Thank you for that. And Torino Empoli ended 1-0, another one that we had eyes on. So that was good for our friend Juric to do so. Milan Monza 3-0. So even though we just talked about our Monza fellows winning just on the 94th minute, man, so exciting. But still keeps them at bay per se, even though they're above us at bay. Udinese Sassuolo was another one that we had eyes on, and 2-2. So probably it was the best for us anyways from a general perspective as a result. Then Fiorentina Verona, a very short 1-0 lead and so on, but at least it keeps Verona down. Bologna, we're going to talk about that one soon, but wins 2-0 against Roma. Then Lazio Inter, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit, being of your root, or let's say your fanship and so on, wins 2-0 at the Olimpico against Lazio. And last but not least, the one that just finished now, an exciting turnaround by Atalanta, which started with a 1-0 under to win 4-1. So what does the standing on match day 16 look like? Just to mention a few, we have on the top four, and then I'll stop there because we need to focus on the fourth per se. We have Inter now sitting at 41, leading 4 points over the second one, which is always second, aren't they? Juventus 37 points, AC Milan sitting at 32, so 5 points anyways to the third, and Bologna at 28, surpassing Napoli and Fiorentina. So Bologna, wow! Like, what do you think about that, Julian?
I think it's incredible. It's a testimony to what Thiago Motta was starting to build last season, and now we're starting to see him literally bore fruit from the soil with the use of a lot of his players He's implementing a very creative, fluid attacking style play with Xerxes really playing a pivotal role. It's just astonishing, honestly, to see them play in such a consistent and fearless manner, especially against a lot of the top teams. They drew to Inter, drew to Juve. The only loss was to Milan. I believe they beat Napoli, if I'm not mistaken. I think they beat Napoli, if I'm not mistaken, in the league. But I know definitely they drew to Inter at the San Siro when they were down 2-0. They came back. They drew to Juventus. So I think they beat Lazio. They beat Lazio, so they're definitely a team that could compete for European football, and a team that's a club that's not afraid to face the title contenders in the Serie A.
I'm quickly looking at the matches that you were looking at, that you were talking, briefly about. But yeah, I'm seeing definitely wins, obviously, against the lower teams, which we are missing, and that's why they are in the fourth spot. But yes, a 1-0 win over Lazio, a tie with Inter 2-2 at the San Siro, and a tie to Monza, but a tie with Napoli. And then, the Milan match, that's where they lost, you're right, 1-1 against Juventus. So, I mean, obviously, to be on the fourth spot, you must be doing well. And we had, even though, unfortunately, for a very short period, Thiago Motta, at the very beginning, he just came out of...
As a manager, of course, also a player. But, yeah.
Of Coverciano, and in our past, we kind of had those, and look at Juric as well, and they were doing so crap for different reasons, while maybe that's because of the Piazza, so the type of fans that we have, or the previous owner, which was known to have a coach for 7-8 matches, and then let's go on to the next and have 3 or 4 coaches on their books. But anyways, no, Thiago Motta, he did excel, I think, similarly to Gilardino per se, but
yeah,
when he came out of Coverciano, which is the school for referees. And he was to be the next, jewel or genius or whatnot. And obviously, at the beginning, in the moment where Genoa was doing quite bad, it was too much pressure, I guess, as well. And now with Bologna, he had, mid-side table that was, doing comfortably normal, per se, with Canadian ownership, by the way, Saputo, and from Montreal, and then finally he has, with, would you say it almost like no name players?
Yeah, I think it's considered especially this season, it's considered a downgrade compared to last season. They had Arnautovic, who was in fine form. I believe Nicolas Dominguez is no longer part of the midfield, who was literally one of the key assets in the role. But now you have Xerxes, Ferguson wearing the armband. So yeah, almost no-name players, but they're making a name for themselves. And even in the fullback position, I believe they had Andrea Cambiasso in the fullback position last season, who's now back at Juventus. So there are a lot of gaps to fill, and no-name players who are shining at the moment and are catching the eyes of many potential suitors for next season, for sure.
I guess that brings me to the question. We can quickly talk about, going back to our standings, Napoli 5th, Fiorentina 6th with 27 both points. 26 is now Atalanta at 7th, 25th now. 25 points at 8th spot is Roma. And then we have a little bit of a gap going with Torino, Monza, Lazio, and so on. But what do you think? What do you think about Serie A so far? What has produced, and what are the the outcomes that you think that we might be looking at in the future, like Campioni versus top 4 for the new formula of the Coppa the Champions League, or whatever that might be called. What do you see? What do you think?
No, I think it's going to be very exciting. It's clearly there's a lot of unpredictability within the Serie A right now. If you look at Bologna, Frosinone at a certain point, especially at the beginning of the season, we're competing almost they're in the form to possibly make Europa League. Monza too. Last season we saw Udinese as well. We were literally in the top 4 for quite a long time. So I think these new formats and the new formulas is just going to add more creativity, especially if the the Serie A get a fifth team in the Champions League, I think that will be huge, and that will create more exposure and more financial resources for the teams to grow within the transfer market for sure.
So why don't you give us a quick recap of what this new formula would look like?
Yes, I believe it's a league format of 36 teams. 36 teams, and based on the coefficiency of like the TV views, the leagues are going to have a certain amount of slots. Each league's going to have a given amount of slots of how many teams will represent them in the league. I believe it's 10 fixtures in the league. They're going to be put in a pot from pots 1 to 4 based on their standings and their UEFA ratings, if I'm mistaken, to determine which teams are going to play against each other. And based on after match week 10, the top I'm not sure. I believe the top 10 or top 9 teams go to the next round, or the top 15. I'm not entirely sure, but I think top 18, top 17, 16, more or less, because we create around the 16 would go on to the next round, and then it would be around the 16 quarterfinal, semifinal. So pretty much it's almost same format, except rather than the group stage, it's pretty much a league kind of like a league standing, a mini season of within the Europa Continental tournament per se.
Yeah, I apologize to put you on the spot for that one. I'm not sure myself either, but it definitely does sound what I remember as well. This huge league.
Yeah, a huge league, essentially.
Yeah, it's a huge league where you're not playing against everyone. Yeah. I guess based on their pot, they might be playing against a certain amount of teams equally from different pots and so on.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And then all together we'll create some sort of a point system, and I guess there will be the differential based on goal differential, direct confrontations, or I don't know really. And that will then succeed to go into the knockoff stages, which we've seen so far. But the difference, as you mentioned, is the group stages versus this overall. So it'll be interesting. I don't know if it's official, and I'm looking at you for confirmation or not, whether we're going to get a fifth spot in for sure, or if it's still like rumored out there. I'm not too sure.
I think it's still up for discussion, if I don't mind saying. Julian made a bit of an yeah. It's possible though, because I think one of the rumors is that England might lose. They were kind of more or less the favor, and with a couple of the English teams falling out of the Champions League, I think it could be Italy's for taking, which is kind of fantastic if you think about that.
Going back to our conversation with respects to Bologna, I mean, it's still early. We're almost towards half season. We have 3 matches left, I guess, for the first leg. But it's still quite interesting. And to your point, at a certain point we had Lecce up there and a whole bunch. But the interesting when Serie A or the competition, soccer culture in general, is interesting is when you get different teams and not the usual teams, if I may say this, to make things interesting. And we had a brief conversation just before recording. And I want you to cover it if you don't mind. And with respects to Genoa, what, from your perspective, from a journalist or from an interista and so on, what did you see Genoa before the start, and what do you think about Genoa so far?
I thought Genoa, for me, previewing the Serie A, one of the pieces I wrote was top 5 teams to watch out for, and Genoa were one of them. I thought they made some interesting moves in the Mercato, bringing in Malinowski, a player that I was a huge fan of at Atalanta, Junior Messias, who, although he was on a decline at Milan last season, I still think he has attributes to offer to Genoa. And Dragosin too, a very experienced central defender. So I think there's definitely a lot of interesting profiles, and they have leadership qualities that would help them survive. I think they're at a spot where I saw that I knew that they wouldn't be relegated, because I think they were better than that. And I think I saw them competing for a mid-table spot, and that's pretty much where they are right now, more or less in the middle of the pack. I think maybe defensively they just have to improve a little bit more. I feel like that's their weakest point, based off of the matches that I've seen. But other than that, I think quite an exciting team to watch, especially in the offensive phase, for sure.
We've been talking that throughout, and our biggest concern is not necessarily the defense itself, being also from Serie B, where it was our strongest point, right? But ultimately, then from our strongest point, that's where we're getting hit, and then after analysis and so on from different aspects and different corners, it's more about the benchers coming in and not replacing the starting 11 at the same levels, and most of our goals, like I can't really think about how many points we've lost so far, but a good number of points. At least we're talking about 5-6 matches where goals are conceded after the 80th minute. And these are silly statistics, but at the same time, if you look at I think I saw this one statistic we're talking about. If you had either only the first half, we would be like in the third spot. If you look at in the 80th up to the 80th minute, we would have been like 6th or 7th spot. So it's analysis and statistics that anyways are interesting and important, I guess, from a coach perspective to focus and do better. And I think that's what happened also against the Juventus match. So let's quickly talk about the Genoa Juventus. So this was match day 16 at the Ferrari, so in Genoa. And after a very disappointing streak of a few matches against Empoli and the loss against Monza and so on, that we were facing some question marks towards our Gilardino, even though I think he's doing such a great season, first year in Serie A, but at the same time, there is potential there if we are willing to wait for him. And we went into the Juventus match, as we did with other great teams such as Lazio, Roma, forget about the Fiorentina. That's like a write-off type of match at the very first match day, but no fear against anyone, essentially, like sort of like the motto that is happening right now. And indeed, the goal by Juventus came entirely, exclusively by a defensive mistake. Rather than doing it in the last 10 minutes, it happened in the first half. So we gifted this penalty over to Juventus, and obviously Chiesa's not going to miss.
But he's caught in possession. Vlahovic, Chiesa, can he punish Genoa? He's brought to ground Federico Chiesa, and the referee in no doubt but to point to the spot.
Before we get into also the second half with the goal by Genoa and so on, what's your analysis or what's your take on the match itself?
I think overall, I thought it was impressive. It was impressive from Genoa, despite going down 1-0 the first half. After such a fatal error, they responded very quickly. It shows character, shows resilience, and as you said, they were fearless. They exploited the Juventus right from the kickoff pretty quickly to attain the equalizer and then seal an important point based on all the other results as well. So I think there's a lot of positives from it, and it's just unfortunate that fatal mistake led to the opening goal, because had that mistake not occurred, I think it would have been a different fixture for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Julian, you're so right on a couple of points too, because as Fabry mentioned earlier, like, at least coming into the season, it wasn't something for us where we would have thought, well, we really need to think about defensive reinforcements beyond maybe left back or some positions where obviously Mimo's no longer in the side and we need to replace him and all those things. But it has been kind of a recurring thing where we've had defensive mistakes, whether or not it's at the 80th minute or whatever time, there are people lapsing and tracking back a player, or in this case, Badel has a heavy touch, or maybe it's between two minds, and we basically play Juve on all of a sudden. Or we had, moments later in the match, which we've seen and mainly have gotten away from, where Martinez kind of is a little loose, and all of a sudden we're giving the ball away in our own third that way. So I think it's something that it is a little bit of a problem, but at the same point, the other angle you're coming from, where, what's kind of fun about this Serie A season is that a lot of sides can get points off of each other. One, that error didn't completely deflate Genoa's sails. And two, as you mentioned, from the beginning of the match, they were coming at it and they're ready to go their way and play their way. It wasn't, let's batten down the hatches and try to hold on for a point. They were legitimately trying to score. I mean, I'm saying they, meaning we. But it was an exciting match in that way.
In the second half, for the almost one of the, I don't know, I'm going to say the first time, but rarely times, at least if it's not based on the need to change someone from the bench, we started with Ekuban on the second half.
Yeah.
Again, going back with our comments in past pods when we were talking about Gilardino always waiting the last 5 minutes. and that's where we were hurting the most because we were doing these changes, and they're not able to keep up with the original formation. But Ekuban, which most of the Genoani hate because he's like this, super, fit player, dynamic and so on, but he's never able to score. And what does he do? He comes in first half, does an amazing assist after a passage from Bedell, who was one of the, the main people that made that mistake back in the defense where Chiesa was able to get into the box and got that foul. But he did this amazing pectoral stop in the air with his temple or ear or something, but beautiful header over to Gudmundsson, and he puts that in. It was just, I don't know, obviously I'm biased, but that goal was just like wonderful.
Ekuban, fresh from coming on. Ekuban, Bade, Frendrup now. Ekuban, Gudmundsson surely! And Gudmundsson brings Genoa back into the contest. Albert Gudmundsson, no Retegui, no problem. Gudmundsson leading the line valiantly.
This is incredible. I mean, I thought when you were going to say what we've been talking about on the pod before about how we've been ragging on Ekuban basically all season long. And every time he's come in, it's never really been clinical and not really seemingly found a place to fit. And it was awesome to see that. It was amazing to see that contribution instantly. And, you said it perfectly, like the touch to control the ball, because it was not an easy ball to control. And the awareness to see, how do you think that quickly and play it on that perfectly too? It was just a fantastic goal. And it was all his doing, really. It was 80% Ekuban, an amazing way to level it up.
Exactly. It's important for his ego because we know that he was quite emotional with respects to the past goals or assists that he has missed and so on. So it's good for his, for his so on. So this made it also another match without Retegui once again. So obviously without Retegui and Gudmundsson in his day, it makes the difference anyways. And from the Serie B as well, Gudmundsson and Ekuban together have shown anyways to always be important and have that bond together, and it proved it as well.
Yeah.
But let's take it a little step back from an Inter's perspective. So when this match happened, this was on Friday. So it was always tete-a-tete, as we say in Italian, or not head-to-head, but, 1 point differential. Juve was playing always before, Inter was playing right after. So you would always see all these journalists saying, Juve is back on top of the league. Yeah, okay, wait a minute, wait till Inter plays, and obviously they're going to win. And they keep their lead up until match day 16, where Genoa in the titles were Genoa holds Juve. I think it was more like Juve is able to tie with Genoa, but we'll get a little bit into that. From an Inter's perspective, obviously I can understand what you're about to say, but how did that feel?
Of course, it felt really good knowing that the title race was in their hands. They had the chance to increase the distance, the gap from Juventus. I don't want to go all season with an Allegri side 2 points of behind Inter. For me, especially with no cup competition, that's a big no. I feel like they could easily. I feel not easily, but I feel like eventually an Allegri side with no cup competitions, only 2 points behind, will catch up at a certain point. So I feel like I was quite relieved that they finally dropped points, and it just felt good knowing that it was an Inter's control. The title race is pretty much in Inter's control now, where getting 3 points would allow them to increase the gap to 4 points. So it was an important game. I was still nervous, of course, because for the longest time, Inter struggled against Lazio at the Stadio Olimpico. I think the last time we beat Lazio at the Stadio Olimpico was when Spalletti was the coach. And I think this was a big match for Inzaghi, because since Inzaghi took over at Inter from Lazio, he's failed to. He suffered 2 defeats, 3-1 in 2 consecutive seasons at the Stadio Olimpico against Sarri. So Sarri seems to have always gotten the best of Inzaghi at the Stadio Olimpico, and knowing Lazio's the terrible form that they're in right now, the underwhelming form that they're in right now, Sarri saw this match perhaps as a moment for him to il punto di svolta, the turning point of the season, I think. So, and so yeah, I was quite positive. I was quite positive and happy, but at the same time, I was nervous. There was still a part of me that was a bit overwhelmed of the match, for the match, for sure.
So Interisti right now, we're rooting for Genoa, and rightfully so.
Right.
And in 2 match days, it's going to be Genoa at Ferraris once again against Inter. So we're going to see how much siding with Genoa that's going to happen. But something else that kind of caught my curiosity was the explosion. I got suckered into that as well. But the explosion into social media where Juventini got all so pumped up, negatively speaking, against this match. So I'm not too sure if you guys were following any of this, but essentially the 2 major things, 3 instances happen and only 2 have been talked about, mostly on national television like in Italy, but a little bit also on social media, because everything is about Juve. It's what you have to talk about, otherwise everything else is useless in their eyes and most of, people in general. But so what they're talking about is this missed penalty on Bani, which touched the hand in our box. And the second one was with the straight leg of Malinowski over to whatever his name of the Juve player. But everyone is failing to mention also a missed penalty for Genoa where Vasquez got tripped by Cambiaso. Rather than talking mostly about that Cambiaso thing, which I think it was just a clear miss and it can happen, even though we have VAR and all this stuff. Even our president said when he stepped into the La Lega Serie A meeting, he said, I'm still stumbling on why we didn't get a penalty against. So what do you guys think, both of you, about the missed penalty on Bani? So just a quick recap for everybody listening. It's essentially the ball comes into the box. Can't remember who kicks it from the Juve side. It hits the leg of Bani, and then it hits the arm of Bani himself. So people are saying, why didn't VAR call it? Why didn't the referee call it? And so on. Should have this been or not been a penalty?
I mean, from my perspective, it's one of those ones that comes in the unnatural positioning, I guess. I mean, like, remember, we didn't have the same, but there was our gripe against Milan's goal against us when we thought we should have gotten something out of that match. Pulisic's goal.
That's different. That was pure volleyball. You know that.
It was terrible, obviously. He controls the ball with his chest, and then he's also using his arm to move the ball down. In this case, when you're blocking the ball with your foot and it happens to roll up and hit your arm, that's different than actually handling the ball. You're not handling the ball to make a play with the foot. Like, sometimes those things happen. And so in my mind, that's kind of, every time a ball hits you in your arm, you can't always call that a penalty. It's just if you are deliberately stopping play or if you're deliberately controlling the ball, then that's always the gray area that will always exist, whether or not we have VAR, is what is deliberate and what is not, what's an unnatural or what's a football maneuver or whatever, and what's not. For me, that's why it's not a penalty, and I don't think that that's the case. I mean, I think maybe with the Malinowski one, we might have gotten away with something, but but at least with that one, I don't think there's as much of an obvious error or penalty. You can maybe have a shout for it, but I don't think you can feel super aggrieved that you didn't get it, in my opinion.
No, I think that the fact that it hit off his leg first, for me, I think in the rules it clearly states that if the ball bounces off another part of the body and then hits your hand, it's somewhat unnatural. And I think the problem, so I don't think for me, it wasn't a penalty, but I think like the gray area is like the lack of consistency in the Serie A, where we see these kind of scenarios given. So I think based on the rules, yes, it shouldn't have been a penalty, but I think what's causing a lot of the controversy is just the lack of consistency, where we've seen these type of scenarios be given a penalty before. And then, as you said, Matt, the gray spot between what's considered natural, unnatural, and it's just, even with VAR, the concept of the handball is just so complicated. It's so difficult to comprehend and to define these days, even with all the technology that we have. So, for sure.
We're introducing the American problem in sport, where all of a sudden these rules were super clear, and it's like, I'm I grew up in the States. I'm a big American football fan. And I think it's absolutely ridiculous that we have to question what a catch is in American football. Like, we're in that place, like when you break things down and reviewing it, like, did he mean to do it? And you things move so quickly. It's really hard to say yes or no sometimes. And to really, you can't ever understand intent when these things are happening. You just have to infer it somehow. And I think that's one of the most difficult things. But anyway.
I guess the biggest part of why I'm bringing this up is why, well, I know the answer, I suppose, but why this attention around this issue or these issues per se has become a national, international case, while when you see it from any other of the 19, well, in Juve's mind, it's a Marotta league, so it's all about Inter and favoritism, even though there are more penalties in their favor compared to anybody else, including us with 0 in our favor. But that's a different
story. You haven't had a single penalty all season?
0 penalties all season and 7 for Inter, 4
that's
for Juve.
Wild. I never thought about that.
I mean,
you're right.
Yeah.
You've not won a single penalty this season.
Yeah, but to that point was mine to say that the fact of why, when it's about Juve, or if I may say, Julian, I apologize for this, but when it's about the major league, the big sisters as we call them, why it becomes, I mean, I get it for ratings and so on, but why shouldn't it be treated equally for all the teams? Absolutely. When there is a major, if that is the case anyways, refereeing or VAR mistake or issue or whatever that might be. But, we live in Italy. Well, Calcio Serie A is in Italy quite different compared to EPL. I remember speaking to a couple of British people, and they were telling me something like that in the Genoa match against Juventus. Perhaps it would have been way more talked about, the missed penalty not given to Vasquez with Cambiaso tripping him in the box. That would have been the topic of discussion on national television, which is quite interesting. And maybe that could be one of the reasons why also EPL stands in a different...
Well, no. I will say unequivocally that EPL is as fucked or more than Italian football. That's when it comes to... They've had to publicly apologize after final results like 4 times already this season, saying like, this was the wrong result, but we're just going to let it stand. That's ridiculous. So everyone's got it wrong. I think there's the added, you're referring to some subtext in Italian football that like we all kind of know about with the Big Six, and also with some of the other things about maybe how referees are handling certain matches or something. But like, I think at the end of the day, I don't know. I mean, the thing about this is, what's interesting about this match actually is what Julian was talking about earlier is at the beginning of the match day, Juve win this match. They keep pressure on Inter, and we're early in the season, and they're just 2 points behind. And just as Julian said, they don't have any, European competitions to deal with. So you think like, well, they're going to only get more healthy. They've got all these other players, and then they don't get the result that they need. And then all of a sudden the conversation is, well, what if the only was like this, then maybe it would have been. So I think you have some of that angle that's kind of playing into it a little bit too, which unfortunately for us, it's less interesting to say that, we should be above Sassuolo right now if we would have gotten a penalty. But
Julian, do you think Inter should win the 3 competitions, or is there more focus on one versus the other?
I think definitely the main priority is the Scudetto, the second star, the 20th Scudetto. Like, I think that should be the main priority, and there's no excuses. That's Inter they have to win it. I think they have all the tools necessary, and Inzaghi has shown that so far this season that they are the favorites to win it. I wouldn't mind sacrificing the Coppa Italia if it means going further in the Champions League, personally, per se.
For sure. And then if you continue...
For the sake of Italian football, I think we'll take that.
I agree. And then
if the competition, I would sacrifice. If I had to choose a competition between one of the 3, it would be the Coppa Italia, hands down. I would prefer to rotate the squad during the Coppa Italia.
So if you quickly look at the remainder of the table, so looking down from the second part of the table, so you have Lazio at 21 together with Monza, both on the 10th spot. Then you have Lecce, 12th spot with 20, 19, you have Frosinone. A small gap, 3 points down, is Genoa with 16, together with Sassuolo on the 14th spot, as Matt was mentioning. Then Cagliari now sitting on the 16th spot for 13, together with Udinese, so 3 points below us. And then in the relegation area, you have Empoli with 12, Verona with 11, and Salernitana at the bottom. So same question, I guess, with respects to the lookout for the top. Now, at the bottom, what do you think? What do you see after 16 match days?
It was pretty much what I predicted. Udinese, for me, is depleted, not the same Udinese as last season. They lost Dodgy, Beto, a lot of the main components. So I saw them fighting for relegation. Salernitana, not the same for sure. And then Empoli is just they just keep regressing. So it was more or less what I expected based on the bottom half of the table.
So you see Cagliari out of the battle, or is it going to be together with the other four?
Cagliari out of the relegation battle, you think?
Yeah.
You're asking me. I think Cagliari will just. I think it's going to be the last spot will be between Cagliari and Empoli, not Empoli, Udinese. I think the last relegation spot. I think Cagliari is they're going to go toe to toe at the end of the season. I think those two.
Well, I mean, it's stacked. Like, I don't think we're exactly out of the clear yet, but like when you look at Cagliari and Udinese at 13, Empoli's at 12, Verona's at 11, and hopefully Salernitana continue to drop some points. They play Milan this weekend, so I guess that prospect looks pretty good. But I don't know. I mean, look, I would have thought that Empoli would have been rock bottom at this time of the season. I'm somewhat surprised that Salernitana are struggling as much as they are, but I know, like there have been some changes and some things that have been going on there too. I agree with Julian. I think that Udinese are where I would kind of think that they would be. They're not the Udinese maybe of old that would normally be in the 10th spot and be pretty comfortable there and always give you a good match. It seems like there's more to be had there from them this season. And so I totally would not be surprised if they end up in that position. It's hard for me to say Cagliari will be in there, but at the same time, they're right there. They're really only just a point above where Empoli have played thus far. I think Cagliari actually, even though they came up from Serie B with us, I think they have enough in that team to find a way to safety. So I think the mix is probably going to look the way that it does. I don't feel a team like Frosinone or maybe even Lecce are going to get caught up in this fight. Unfortunately, it just seems like they've been able to get enough results against the right teams, and obviously they're sitting a lot prettier in their points than really any of the other teams from us on down are. But we'll see. I mean, I think that for me, Salernitana unfortunately probably stays there. I wonder about Verona, and the last spot I think is maybe a coin flip. I personally think we could all be in that place, but I think it's more than likely going to be Udinese, but we'll see how the rest of the season turns out. I mean, it's obviously still plenty of matches to play, and we've been in this. Remember the season we went down, how poor Salernitana looked, and all of a sudden they rose from the ashes.
Exactly.
You never know what can happen. Like that could totally.
I still question that, by the way, but okay.
Well, it's a different story.
Right. So if we look at match day 17, so I wanted to quickly focus on a few matches in saying there's going to be Monza Fiorentina, there's going to be Frosinone Juventus in Frosinone, there's going to be Torino Udinese, so that's another one going back to what we were talking about. Interesting to see what happens with Juric against this Udinese that we're all pointing towards the relegation. Inter is going to play at home against Lecce. Salernitana is going to play at home against Milan. Bologna at home against Atalanta. That's probably like a European type of, playoff type of thing. Then we have Verona Cagliari. So that's like the rock bottom sort of. Interesting to watch as well. And last but not least that I'm covering here quickly is the Derby del Sud, which is Roma against Napoli. The three I left out purposely are the ones that I want to talk to you guys about predictions. Obviously for different reasons. One is the Inter match because our Julian being an Interista. the Lazio match because he covers the Laziali, and last but not least, obviously, the Genoa match at Sassuolo. So I guess let's start with you, Julian, and with the 3 matches that I just mentioned.
So I'm gonna say 2-0 Inter against Lecce. Then I'm gonna go with Lazio's playing Empoli. I'm gonna say
At Empoli.
at Empoli. I think I say 2-1 Lazio, and then Genoa is playing. Wait, I'm trying to figure out which team Genoa is.
Sassuolo, Genoa.
Genoa Sassuolo.
At Sassuolo.
Ooh. I say
Both
one.
sort of like with up and down, right?
I say 1-1. Genoa Sassuolo 1-1.
All right. Matt.
I think I might go in reverse order just to kind of make it interesting, because I think the Genoa Sassuolo match is going to be. I'm with Julian on this. This is another one, and I don't think we're head and shoulders above Sassuolo. I know they've not been at the highs that they've seen in recent seasons too, and everything. And it'll be a little bit bittersweet. I think this is our first match against Luca Lepani in opposing team colors, and of course there's Pinamonti, who we had several years ago now as well. I don't know. I mean, I think that every time I feel confident and think we're going to get a result, we seem to lose the match. So I almost want to say that we're not going to do that. But I sort of feel like we're going to win. I don't see some sort of goal fest or anything like that. But I don't know. I mean, it's just like the weird little things, like seeing Vasquez play like a 30-yard through ball as a guy that was a central defender like a season ago. It's those types of things that make me feel confident, because it seems like this side has confidence that maybe it shouldn't have sometimes. And Sassuolo is a team, again, it's not a team that like, oh, we're going to easily get points off of these guys. But I think if you have the group together playing in a way where we have that confidence, I think we could maybe get something out of the match. I don't think there's going to be a lot of margin in it though. And so, if we, again, it's just been the story of the season. If we have defensive errors or mistakes, if Martinez is a little bit sloppy, if we're not great at tracking back, maybe, we've complained a lot about our substitutions. If we don't time those right, you could see it turning the other way, but I think we might actually win this one 1-0. The Lazio match against Empoli, also tricky because, we know Empoli gave us a good fight. Obviously, we didn't get it, really share the points with them in that match. They were able to get points against Napoli not that long ago. I do think Lazio, though, will win. So I kind of like a 2-0 to Lazio as well against Empoli. And then last but not least, with Inter in Lecce, I mean, I don't know. It's just hard to go against Inter at this point. I know Lecce are themselves not exactly a weak side, but I mean, Inter are the side in Serie A, and I would expect them to win. Maybe it's like 3-1 or something like that in the final score.
I'm going to go back to the same sequence of Julian. So I'm going to start with the Inter match, and I'm kind of copycatting what Matt said. It's at San Siro. Inter has to keep that lead because of their 20th. So the double star, and their focus is 100% on that. Lecce will give them a fight, but I don't see any issues for Inter. Lazio, on the other hand, I have an issue with that one because Andreazzoli at home has shown to be quite tough, but at the same time, Lecce can't continue to slip. So I think that's going to turn out in a tie, honestly. Last but not least, Sassuolo Genoa. How much can we talk about that? I can say that Sassuolo has shown to be leading and then depleting, or vice versa, losing and then winning 4-3. So it's a little bit tough one to say, almost like a tripleta for sure. Ultimately, it depends if our Gilardino boys are going to be able to get out of that wimp of away games and starting to get points, because the only points we got away, 4 to mind you, 1 with at Udinese and 3 with Lazio, but those are the only ones. We need to start to get points away, and that does not only mean tying, but we also need to win some games, especially when we have the likes of Inter right after that one, and then Bologna, which we know what that means. So I don't know. my heart says that it has to be a win for Genoa, but ultimately on the paper, it looks honestly like a tough match to predict. It can go anywhere from a tie to a loss. So it's hard for me to, I can tell you the heart, and I told you, maybe the reality is, the reality check says a tie, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I think the mark against Genoa, we were talking earlier about our run of form, and, recently we've played Cagliari, Verona, Frosinone, Empoli, Monza. We've managed one clean sheet in that run, and I don't think we've scored more than a goal in an entire run of fixtures. Yeah. And we've not had Boni for some of those matches too. But I think those are things that it tells you why it's so important for us to get on the right side of those chances, because I think we're never really out of matches, but we're not exactly walking away with anything either.
So just for that formation itself, we will most likely not have Retegui nor Messias.
No Retegui, I don't think.
And we'll most likely have Strootman back. We have Bani back.
Will?
Yeah, he started today to play, to train with the team. He might not be from the starting get-go, but he might come in after, or vice versa, get subbed throughout the match. But he started to train with the team today. So that is a likelihood of at least to be called up anyways. And at the same time, at the front, we already know it's going to be Ekuban and Goodmanson anyways. Mm-hmm. So always missing, important. Well, we have also Malinowski. Forgot about him, as well. But he didn't get a red card, right?
Yeah, he's still eligible.
All right. So we are at a wrap. So let's quickly thank you very much, Julian, for being as our honorable guest on our pod. And I wanted to briefly ask you, if you don't mind sharing with everyone where can they reach you at, and what should they follow on social media?
Yep. So you guys can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Calcio with Julian to keep up with the Serie A and follow my work, and just in general to keep up to date with everything that's going on, and to see me on different platforms and connect with the other people who share the same passion as me, like I am with you guys today.
Love it. Always great to meet a fellow Calcio fan, and you do some great stuff.
Especially in North America here. So, in Canada.
Exactly. So thank you once again, Julian. That was wonderful to have you. You'll always be welcome to come at any time. And definitely, I got you a little bit earlier than our Inter match. Actually, let me just pin you there for a second. Even though it's not next match, but the match after that one, what do you think about that match?
I think it's going to be the match on the whole. I think it's going to be interesting. Genoa they're fearless, right? So regardless of Inter's form, I think they're going to come out aggressive and strong. But at the end of the day, I think Inter's quality is just too.
Yeah.
It's probably going to be a little bit too much for Genoa to handle. No disrespect, but I just think it's going to be a little bit too much.
That's what we said from the get-go. We said if we had any chance, it would be more with Juve rather than Inter. If we get a point, we have to get it with Inter. With Juve, definitely we'll never be able to get it with the Inter, right?
You're not lying. That was actually something we did talk about. So it's not just because we have the Inter guest on. So.
No, exactly. All right. So thank you, everyone, for listening to us. You can always follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Drop us a comment. Give us likes throughout. Share also our page and pod, especially with your friends and so on. But anyways, never forget, always and forever, Forza Genoa. And Buon Natale. You've listened to La Lanterna, a spotlight on Italian football, a podcast powered by Genoani Si Resta. Thank you for listening, and see you next week.